Hey there, Internet. So, election 2022 is over. It's in the bag as far as the votes being cast, but it didn't go so well. And especially compared to expectations. So, I was like watching the Real Clear Politics generic vote, and it was like 3% up for Republicans the night before the election, and a couple of the places I watched said, everyone was everything. Two of the places I looked, which was Real Clear Politics and a channel called Red Eagle Politics, said 53 Senate seats. Another one called Let's Talk Elections, which is a young man who's very liberal, said 50-50. He didn't do a House projection, but the Red Eagle Politics House projection was 44 Senate House seats. And about 6 weeks ago, they were expecting the Republicans to maybe get 225 House seats. And it would, honestly was probably closer to that. If it's not even going to reach that, probably. As it stands now, on Saturday night, they called Nevada for the Democrat in the Senate. So right now it's 50-49 in the Senate. Georgia's up in the air because they got to run off. 204 Democrats and 211 Republican seats called. It's up in the air. If Republicans win every race they're currently leading in, they're going to win the House, but they're only going to get like 220. So they're not even going to get what people were thinking. So is it a win? They lost at least possibly a net of one governorship if Carrie Lake wins. 2 if she does not. They picked up Nevada. That's still up in the air. They're still counting Arizona. And there's still at least 500,000 votes to count, I think, in all the different spots. There's some districts in California that are dragging their feet with getting it counted. So it's is it a win? Well, if we flip the House, I guess technically so, but compared to historical averages, you almost put it in the Democrats' column because they held off Republicans. Some bright spots. The popular generic vote right now, 51.4% for Republicans. 40, let me look here, Real Clear Politics. It is saying 50.4% Republican, 46.7% Democrat, and obviously there's some third party write-ins, that sort of stuff going on. Republicans plus 4.7. That translates to like 221 seats is what the Republicans should have in the low 220s. That's not we're not even going to get there. Another bright spot is, and I will include a link to the CBS exit polling, the first time voters in a midterm election broke for Republicans, 53%. So, you get people early on, if their first voting experiences often are for one party, a lot of times they just keep voting for that party. That's a good sign. Although, as people get older, they become more conservative. And maybe it's just the garbage that goes on makes them actually want to vote. I don't know. But generally, people, as they get older, become more conservative. Some people say it's because they have more wealth to protect. I think it's because we learn as we age. We find out what we thought when we were 20 just isn't so sometimes. I mean, back when I was 21, 22, I could get behind the personality of a person that was a politician. I was all behind Bush until 2008, and as I started having to defend him, it's finally when he sided with TARP. I was done with personalities. That's why I was not joining anyone's cult of personality, whether it was Trump, Cruz, and I was a Cruz guy, 2016, Trump, Cruz, or anybody. School boards. There was, I think it was an Atlantic article, crying that conservatives won school boards. Now, I don't know what happened in state legislative races, all of them. The one that I know might be flipping locally I don't know how this exactly shook out. Now, it may be that just red areas got redder and blue areas got bluer, and that's why we got the generic vote results that we did. It's still possible that Democrats take the House. So that leaves us with the blame. There's lots of it to go around. If you're on the right, it needs to be you, me, and everybody. Whether, I didn't get out and doorbell my precinct. Can say I helped because I went to I did throw some stuff on the Skagit County Republicans Facebook. I did go and help with the fair booth. But let's just kind of, on my notes for blame to go around, and this is the time to do the blaming. If we're going to do recrimination, say, this is your fault. And there's a lot to go around. And now it's time for self-examination. We look at it and we say, hey, the Democrats won in it's like after 2020. Ignore the cheating, whether you cheated or not. I'm going to get to my thoughts on that. But you say, look, whether the Democrats cheated or not, they worked the rules as they were. They even manipulated the rules to favor them. Their ground game was better in Pennsylvania. We need to improve that. That's the kind of stuff. If that's what we need to do. If we gotta say stop wasting money on internal party political battles, we need to stop that. Thinking about how we vote. If like Alaska, with their ranked choice voting. If there's multiple Republicans and you want a Republican, you don't want a Democrat, you don't go, I'm going to make a Republican first and a Democrat second, and then I'll put the other Republicans. It needs to be Republican, 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 then Democrat. You put the Democrat at the bottom. Because as I understand how that system works, that will put that, your vote won't count toward the Democrat till the very end. They never get your vote. You need to think strategically. I got a book up here. I meant to pull it down earlier. It's called The Book of Five Rings. I'll be bringing that back up. It's usually talked about with martial arts, but it's actually something else. I think everyone needs to read it. Non-voters. That's the first person I'm going to blame. Were you just too lazy to get your ballot in? Arguments are, do you hold it till the last second or do you get it in? I'd rather see you get it in early than not at all. If you're the kind of person that's going to procrastinate and just forget, get it in now. If you're saying, well, it doesn't do any good, they'll just cheat. You just cost us elections. Okay? I went through some of these congressional races yesterday. There was about 5 or 6 of them, at least, that were lost by Republicans by less than 1%. If you took 1% off of Democrats, you didn't even change the percentages, you just took 1% off, those Republicans would have won. Not let alone how that would have changed the vote totals. If you add 1% to Republicans, enough for a percentage point, you add that, Republicans win. They might be saying Republicans won the House right now. And in a couple of these races, like the Senate race in Nevada, it's so close that could have flipped that Senate seat. So you're not voting in the midterms for whatever reason. You're in part to blame. So I want you to go in the bathroom real quick, pause the video, go in the mirror, and look in the mirror to see a person that is to blame for this. People who complain but won't help. So years ago, when I was running doorbelling operations locally for the Republican Party, laid out our schedule and all that, and I was out 20 days out of 28 because we took 2 days off during the week. I did like 2,000-3,000 houses myself. I had people saying, so what's the Republicans going to do to win? I said, how about you come out and help? Oh, I don't do that. This guy I worked with, his name was Dan. He goes, Dan doesn't do that. So what are you going to do to change it? I'm going to vote. Why don't you come out and doorbell? He doesn't do that. Go sign wave. He doesn't do that. Go phone bank. I don't phone bank. I'm not going to, or sign wave. I'll doorbell. I'll run my website. I'll do my channel if I can get you guys to like, share, and subscribe and share. My life is changing. Maybe I can't contain as heavy a thing as I used to. Gotta change how I do it. This I can do at night, although I'm actually just after dinner tonight. So if you complain about how Republicans are doing things and you won't get out and help, if you say you don't have time, even if you have kids, is 1 hour a week or 1 hour a month enough worth? Is your daughter's future or your son's future or your grandchildren's future worth a couple hours a month? And I understand also sometimes if like a precinct committee officer meeting, they're scheduled for when I work right now. I get that life happens, but can you do some meaningful political activism? Just not just complaining, with posts on the internet, but write your senator. Go visit your legislators on one day. Maybe that counts for that you're busy enough that you're there for 8 hours. You've covered several months. Go to a school board meeting. We've seen how that's changed what's getting taught in the schools already. The Dodd decision. So pro-lifers, we gotta have a talk. You guys had to run up the score, didn't you? You had to try overreach. You were, excuse my language, but you were pissing all over yourselves to start passing stuff. Now some of you, like Lindsey Graham, I gotta wonder if he didn't deliberately try and sabotage things. Now, did it drive Democratic turnout enough to get them over the hump? Did it make people shift their votes? 9%, according to exit polls, 7 to 9% of people said that was their top issue. Typically, people that vote for that being their top issue already are going to vote for with the party that favors their issue. Gun owners that vote on keeping their guns vote with Republicans. Pro-life people vote with Republicans. Democrats don't if you're pro-abortion, you typically don't vote for Republicans in the first place. But did it drive turnout? Did it shift maybe a few independent voters? Because in a balance of things, you got to ask that question. Single women were one of the groups that really went for Democrats. So you got to ask that. If it was only 1% change, it doesn't seem like much. But again, think of those handful of races. Think of the Nevada Senate race. Both candidates below 50%, less than a percentage point apart right now when they called it. As of this moment, the Nevada Senate race is only 0.7 of a percentage point apart. 1% difference. If that's all the difference it made, it was enough to make sure that Democrats keep the Senate. Think about that for a minute. In Georgia, if I can get my cursor to move over quick enough, in Georgia, 0.9 of a percentage point. Now that's going to a runoff. Think about that. You had to go put ballot measures on so that you can to be able to put abortion restrictions through. Do you really think this was the time to do that? Sorry, I bumped the desk. I'm trying to get better about not doing that. That's the kind of thing that just drove people who were pro-abortion to the polls. You could have advanced your cause by doing things like making it easier to adopt. You could have advanced your cause by making sure we had the services in place for the single moms who are expecting, the pro-life pregnancy centers. You could have been doing that, or asking why the Biden administration wasn't finding out who was damaging, vandalizing and bombing these pro-life pregnancy centers. You could have been spending your time doing that, but you pushed those ballot measures. If Lindsey Graham was acting in good faith on that national abortion ban, he could, instead of doing that, he should have been taking the Biden administration to task about the pro-life pregnancy centers. We should have won the Kansas governor's race, but instead, because they had that constitutional amendment that went down that would have removed protections from abortion, and there was about 2% difference between the Republican and the Democrat. That's a race we should have won. In Kansas. Think about that one. In Nevada, we won the governor's race, lost the Senate race, and when you get two fairly close races like that, I mean, Nevada's governor's race is only about 1.2% difference, maybe as much as 1.5% difference. Both candidates below 50%. But when you get a close race like that, I mean, Nevada's got abortion covered in its constitution. That national ban, a lot of people may not realize that it was in their Nevada constitution, but by pushing it and riling people up, a friend of mine said, you got to look at, he commented in one of my videos that I look at, thinks about a lot about principles and whatnot. I think like strategy. I think about both, but I made the comment, to me it's more of a blood sport because the stakes are so high and you kind of sometimes have to be kind of ruthless. But you got to think, are you playing this long game where you want to end it all, or are you going to go so hard because of your principles and push it now that you'll lose the whole thing? Because it wouldn't take much more than a couple other Senate races going the other way, and the Democrats keeping the House, and then they codify Roe v. Wade, and then you've lost the whole thing. Think about that. Think before you act. I'm really kind of irritated with you guys. I want to see abortion illegal in most cases, but you guys do not think ahead. Trump effect. Look, and this goes into the future thing, but the Republican Party has to be bigger than one man. Some people saying, oh, Trump's so good for us. Where did he turn out the base? I looked up the Senate, or the 2020 results for Pennsylvania. Trump lost by 1.2%, and there was some people bringing up issues. I'm not going to comment on those. I think some of them should have gone before the courts and didn't. But if Trump had just brought out enough to get to 3/4 of the votes that he got, because he got 3,378,000 and change, if he'd gotten to that, if he'd gotten 75% of it, it would have been a little over 2.4 million. You would have come a lot closer with Mastriano. Shapiro, if some of those were flipped, it might have been a lot closer. But with Fetterman, which was the closer race, okay, oh, he did get 3/4 of it, so I gotta stand back. But if he'd gotten the same votes he'd gotten, Fetterman would have lost. Fetterman currently is sitting at 2.7 million. Trump got 3.3 million. If you had gotten 3 million, 10%, 90% of what he got, we would have swept Pennsylvania. What good did Trump do us? I don't see where he's winning us elections. He has a lot of negatives. And regardless of how you feel about the impeachment thing, we lost the Washington 3rd District. Was that really worth it? Now, you could argue that Jamie Herrera Butler shouldn't have voted for impeachment. But where was Trump to bring out people enough for her to win, for Joe Kent to win? That's a question. And I certainly have a problem with some of the never-Trumpers and some of the people that voted for impeachment because they turned around. Now, maybe I didn't see it. Did Jamie Herrera Butler endorse Joe Kent after she lost? Liz Cheney was running around supporting Democrats. What good? What good is this to us? Because while I don't think that Liz Cheney has any principles whatsoever, I don't see. I've never been a fan of Trump, and I don't see where I'm thinking he's a net negative. When I get to the future, I'll explain why. Leadership. No strategy. So this book, A Book of Five Rings, is not a picture book. It has a few pictures, but they're not much. It was written by a guy who's considered the greatest samurai of history, Miyamoto Musashi. Had a dueling record of like 61 and 1. And in those days, if you lost a duel and didn't die, and he didn't, you became the person's student. Interestingly, his sword was beaten by a guy with a stick, so he went and spent time learning how to use a staff. Bow staff, for those of you that know the Japanese term. And then he writes this book. It's not a book on swordsmanship, it's a book on strategy. And I will grant, when I read it, tried to read it as a second-degree black belt, I got partway through the first part, and it was so much of it was over my head. But there is stuff in here that applies to life itself, but people in Japan study this as for at business school. They apply it beyond a martial arts context. I've got a copy of The Art of War. It's on my reading list. I might have to bump it up in there. But we need to have a strategy. Okay? So, a reading recommendation for you if you're into politics and you're looking for something new. Read A Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. It's a great guide on strategy. And some of it makes a lot of sense. He talks about if you're dealing with multiple opponents, line them up and then cut them down like stalks of grain. Think about attacking your problems that way. There was a quote from this that I've taken to heart about difference. He talks about the difference between cutting and slashing, and we were talking about the difference between just living together in marriage with the pastor during the premarital counseling. And then he quoted it during the wedding. And it means attacking with resolute spirit. And that might be something we want to have as well. Not just being desperate and acting enraged. McConnell, that SOB needs to go. Excuse my language. Mitch McConnell, get him out of there. Not for majority leader any longer. This is again that thing about personalities and people staying in too long. His political career has lived long enough, he has become the villain. He literally wasted money, put $9 million into Alaska to keep Lisa Murkowski there when the main challenger was another Republican. You can't be wasting money on inter-Republican battles. I went for Robert Sutherland. Sam Lowe looks like he's winning. If Sam Lowe wins, I'll give him the chance to govern like a Republican. But if he doesn't govern like a Republican, he needs to be primaried. But typically, I would say money should not be, Republican Party money should not be used for Republican battles. The situation in Alaska, we should have been like, there's a problem we want to have. It's going to be Republican versus Republican effectively. No problem. Let's just go with it. Spend that $9 million could have made the difference in Nevada. It could have made the difference in Arizona. It could have made the difference in Pennsylvania. We might not be facing it. We might have won outright Georgia with another couple $1 million. Mitch McConnell's got to go. Rick Scott, same thing with you. I do not want him for majority leader. If he couldn't get us to 51 seats, he's not in this environment. He needs to go. And granted, we only had a few pickup opportunities anyway. But that should have been where all of our money was getting concentrated. Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire. That should have been where our Senate money was concentrated. So there's where the first circular firing squad needs to do its job quickly and be done with it. For the future. Again, the Republican Party is bigger than one man. One day Trump won't be around. You can't use loyalty to a candidate as your judgment of whether somebody is a true conservative, okay? People are going to disagree with you. If they agree with you 90% of the time, that should be good enough. Once we get to the general election, the Reagan rule needs to apply. I shall not speak ill of another Republican. We need to do like Democrats, coalesce around our candidate. How they got John Fetterman elected in Pennsylvania, I still do not understand, except that they had to have moved like that. Candidate quality is absolutely a thing. Mehmet Oz was a terrible candidate. So was the other main Republican. Maybe we couldn't have won Pennsylvania under the circumstances, but Mehmet Oz was not likable. He does not connect with people, and he came from New Jersey. Sounded like came off as a carpetbagger. Sorry, that's just the way it is. Just because somebody doesn't like your candidate in the primary does not make that, or there's not a loyalist to some other elected official, does not make them your enemy. Okay, I mean, and Brian Kemp is going to be a perfect example in Georgia here in a minute. So, what else should we be doing before I get some people? Building a party. We should be looking at what happened in Florida, where we led by 20 percentage points. That took years. It started with the Bushes. Jeb Bush going to Florida and then staying after his dad's presidential campaign and starting to build a party and then getting himself elected governor. They kept building a party. They used competent governance for years and just kept building on it and building on it. They led in registrations in Florida. We need to be registering voters, and that means going into blue areas to do it. And even if we lose, keep registering them, because just because somebody lives in Bellingham, to use a close example here, doesn't mean that they won't vote Republican. Maybe we lose in the 40th and keep losing in the 40th legislative district, but that vote also means they vote for the Republican for the House, Republican for the Senate, Republican for the governor's race, and so on. Same thing in Seattle. We need to go in and we need to be building party, registering voters, and making those contacts. And when you have an event, you can't. I remember one time they were talking about having live music at an event, and I said, and a lot of the party members, because I was the youngest precinct committee officer, wanted to have it at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. I'm like, and they say, well, we could have dancing and that stuff. I'm like, stop. We want to have this in the evening. They're like, oh, I don't want to do an event that doesn't start till 6:30 or 7. It was July or June. I'm like, young people do not want to, and they can handle classic rock that you could handle for these older people. Young people are not going to be attracted. They are working, or they're raising their kids, or they're out doing fun stuff during the day if they have the weekend off. They want to save things like an event like that where there might be music and dancing and maybe some alcohol for the evening. They don't want to do that at 1 o'clock in the afternoon because you want to go to bed by 8 o'clock. You want to attract the youth vote, you can't be stodgy. You got to adapt to the way it's youth. If you're 55 years old, 60 years old, and you're trying to attract that youth vote, think about when you were 20 years old. Even if you were conservative then, did you want to go to bed at 9 o'clock? No, you wanted to stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning, having a good time. Same thing with me. I still stay up 1 o'clock, but I don't have kids yet. So use the Florida model. Stop trying to make the liberal media and the woke like you. Hold to your principles. If our principles is this, hold to it. This is getting a little bit long, but I want to get through this in one shot. Continuing to move in the future. Guys like Ron DeSantis, he's not a Trump loyalist. He just simply attended to business. He showed competent government. He took care of the hurricane issues. He pushed through our agenda. He had dealt with issues related to voter fraud without going on and on and on about it was stolen. You guys got to drop that the election was stolen stuff. It makes you sound like a sore loser. People don't want to hear it. Just drop it. Period. Yes, attend to the issues of it, but don't go on and on about how this needs to be done, especially in a blue state like Washington. Until you get control, you can't do anything anyway because the Democrats aren't going to listen to you. Brian Kemp, he didn't go and help Trump. He said, look, this is the situation in Georgia. You're losing. Sorry, it's a bummer. I don't like it. But he still fixed the issues. They instituted voter ID. adjusted things with the ballot drop boxes. They had record turnout. Democrats have a harder time cheating at it, though. So anything that was alleged, and I'm not sure if they still allow ballot harvesting or if they even did then back in 2020. I don't know, but Florida, they have a ballot harvesting thing being investigated right now. But Brian Kemp attended to the base without being a loyalist. Ted Cruz, it hasn't really been a Trump base. Trump came over to Cruz's positions in 2016. Cruz was the most conservative guy there, and Trump kept having to be forced to move over to where he was at. Trump can broker no rivals. And this is the thing with Mr. Trump. The Republican Party, if he's truly about the conservative movement, about making America great again, he needs to be willing to step aside if there's a better person to take the reins at his age. If he's truly about that, he will step aside and just simply be a kingmaker, or put his efforts into turning out the base for Republicans. When I see him when the base is actually equaling his midterm results, I will believe that he's a net positive for us. And we got to end the circular firing squads. That's something I meant to say in the other future things. A guy named Mike Malosha filed in the last week decided to run the week of filing week for Secretary of State. There was a couple people already running who had been running for months. Well, they had so many Republicans, they divvied them up so that we didn't even have a Republican on the ballot. Guys need to think about who's already running and not make last-minute decisions like that. Greg Abbott is another one I'm kind of high on. Some people say he's too establishment like Brian Kemp. I'm sorry, but he attends to business. He's dealing with the border crisis. He's the one that actually started with the busing migrants to these blue cities. He's actually done pro-gun things. I'm kind of high on Greg Abbott. And again, with the building party thing, Texas and Georgia, people say they're starting to trend to the left. You guys better act like it's already a blue state and start trying to retake it. You got to be on constant offense. We need to be on offense in blue states, trying to turn them red. Use Florida as a model. In existing red states, you got to treat it like it's a blue state and just keep at it. You can't let up. So that's kind of where I see it. The future is not Mr. Trump. Even if he runs in 2024, even if he wins, 2028, he's out. You want to have a long-term, sustaining model for victory. If you want to take this country back, it has to be a constant insurgency within the Republican Party. That is the only way to change. But it needs to be constant. It cannot be about one person. So there you go. There's my 2022 election recap. Do you disagree? Please say so in the comments below. If you live in Georgia, go watch my Democrats Are Coming for Your Guns video. A third of gun owners are still voting for Democrats. Maybe they're FUDs. Maybe they're hardcore leftists that just like guns until they get power and then they want to take them away. I don't know. Think about the policies. If you've been voting Democrat, but you don't like the way the country's going, think about the policies that you yourself have been voting for and the results of them. Because there's a direct correlation between the way you vote, the people that get in, the policies they push, and the results of those policies. And if you're voting for Democrats in these blue areas and the place is going to hell in a handbasket, you might want to rethink that. Because there was a lot of bright spots. Florida, there was a lot of places that went red. They made New York competitive, and 4 of the Republican pickups were in New York. The New York governor's race was competitive. That's a bright spot. Let's build on that. Take back New York. Finish taking back Nevada. Take back Arizona if we don't win the governor's race. Build party, build it out. So until then, that's the end of this Saturday Night Rant. It's been a long one. Y'all take care.